That takes us to the AFC. CBS, Nance and Romo in their usual catbird seat. They get to call Allen versus Mahomes. Gosh, what is this now? I think it's 9. And that blew my mind. I guess before I go any further, right now, over under 48.5. Chiefs favored by 1.5. Matt, did you know, this is going to be the 4th matchup between these two in the playoffs. Mahomes is 29, Allen 28. Guess how many times Brady and Manning faced off in the playoffs in their entire career?
I feel like it's one of those sneaky statistics where you're like, you think it's a lot more than it actually was. It's probably going to be like, give me like 3, dude.
Little under, but 5. But 5. Yeah.
Wow.
And maybe even more surprising, guess who had the winning record?
No way. Manning did not have the winning record.
Mm-hmm. He was 3-2.
For real?
He was 3-2 against Tom in playoff games.
Same.
All that to say, I think these two are going to they're going to surpass that. As far as how many times they play, they're already at 4. And guys, I'm going to get it off right away. I mean, I've been obviously consuming a lot of the coverage this week about this game. The picks are really starting to roll in today. And for a team that has this thing rigged and the refs in their pocket, there have been a lot of people picking the Buffalo Bills. Interested to see how many of us do that. But Matt, what's your instant, thoughts as we get ready for what I think is the game of the year?
Well, yeah, to speak to that, Brian, and you've obviously been gaining a lot of traction online speaking about this ref situation. It's been the main storyline, right? It's basically the Chiefs and the refs versus everybody, and that's just the main story. That's the main take people have, and I get it. We're trying to build narratives. We're trying to build it's basically a wrestling promotional type thing. It's okay. Roger Goodell's Vince McMahon, the refs are Shawn Michaels, and and they're looking to screw somebody over, and that's the Buffalo Bills. And before we get too deep into this ball game, let's touch on it because you touched on it. The Houston Texans, right? Those 2 calls. Can we get a grip as a nation, as football consumers? Come on. Let's say those don't get called. There's no chance in hell they were going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So I don't know what we're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would have been quite the upset considering how they performed, especially when they had the ball. And I'll have a whole separate thought on the Texans later, Matt, when we kind of touch on those teams. But
Okay.
Look, I mean, if nothing else, it'll be interesting to see if all this talk has an impact on the game Sunday. Do these?
I think it absolutely will.
And the elephant in the room, this officiating crew that we've drawn is known for being they throw a lot of penalties. They call a lot of penalties. So where do they meet in the middle and kind of become average, or do they just swallow the whistles and basically only call, non-subjective things that are obvious to anyone and everyone? That is going to be fascinating to follow.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And that was kind of the thing I wanted to lead into. Like with that being such a heavy storyline, I think in a place where typically teams like the Chiefs are going for a 3-peat or something like that, they start to get a little bit complacent, right? Because people are just talking to them as, they're the favorites, odds are they've been here before, they can get it done again. And, obviously people are going to be rooting against that. But I think what you're doing is you're giving mountains of bulletin board material to a team that is shown once they have any little sliver of chip that they can put on their shoulder, you best believe they're going to utilize it and do what they can to motivate themselves.
Absolutely. Breezy, one thing that I think is not getting enough traction and is a huge part of this game, maybe we end up looking back and saying it kind of swung it. James Cook. James Cook is producing at an immense level right now. This offensive line seems to be able to move bodies at will. Do you kind of see it that same way, or do you feel like this is just quarterback versus quarterback? Somebody's going to have to win it with their arm start to finish.
Well, Brian, that's a good point. But which quarterback last week was really that impressive? Was Josh really as good as, vice versa? Was Pat or Josh very impressive going into this game come Sunday? They both threw under 200 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So is it a game of quarterbacks? I mean, on paper, obviously it is because Pat's 3-0 against Josh, right? But I think maybe we should be looking more at the running backs, right? James Cook didn't look too crazy. What, he's 68 yards rushing last week? I mean, that's not going to get the job done in a title game at Arrowhead. So what's it going to come down to? Is it Pacheco versus James? I don't know, because I sure don't know who Josh can trust in a title game either. Can he trust Matt Collins and Shakir to get the job done? I don't know. I like what I saw from Kelsey last week, and I think D-Hop is a veteran at this point and knows how to get the job done from the get-go because he's worked with gazillion times worse behind center. So is it a game of quarterbacks? Because we could argue and say that these guys neither Josh or Pat might do anything crazy come Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
It might just be a game of chess. I think personally it does come down to running backs, and I think in order for Josh and the Buffalo Bills to get past the Arrowhead and to get to the promised land, James Cook is going to have one hell of a day. And I'm going to say at least if James Cook doesn't have 100-plus yards rushing, there's no shot they have a chance at it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and you said, Josh is going to have to go through Arrowhead. I pulled some stats earlier today. Blew my mind a little bit. Well, the ones this year, not so much, but career-wise. So real quick, stick with me, boys. This year, at home, both the Chiefs and Bills, including the playoffs, unbeaten at home. Chiefs are 9-0 at Arrowhead. Bills were 10-0 at Orchard Park. Now, if you take away the Week 18 games where they both lost on the road due to playing backups, if you will, Buffalo on the road this year is a 5-3 team. They're 5-4 if you include the backups game. I'm throwing that out. So 5-3. But digging in deeper, okay, Mahomes and Allen specifically. In his career, Mahomes at home has an 80% win percentage at home. On the road, his win percentage also 80%. He's the same guy. They win the same amount of games, 80%. Josh at home, a 77% win percentage in his career. On the road, it dips over 20%, 56.9% win percentage. I just said that a lot. But you get the point. There is a historical and accurate to this year, a data point that suggests this might be a lot different than the game we saw earlier this year. And maybe more pertinent to the whole thing is just the way the teams are constructed. I feel like, last year, Kansas City was kind of built to go on the road. And they did. Their record was better on the road last year, even in the regular season. This Bills team, Bass Daddy, offensively, they depend on motions. They're the best in the league at it, probably shifting and just kind of making defenses confused. That's harder to do in a loud road environment. You have to be clearer and simpler with your communication. Did anything I just said, does it hold weight to you, or do you think maybe I'm drawing dead on this?
No, I think you're right. I think this game is going to come down to strictly quarterback play, only because to beat Kansas City in the AFC Championship game, I don't think it's going to be because of James Cook. I think it's going to have to be because of Josh Allen. He might have to run in another couple touchdowns like he did last week. And Patrick Mahomes. I don't see them having any sort of chance against Buffalo if he doesn't play great football. Turnover-free football. I think whatever quarterback can take care of the football and not turn it over. I think that Josh Allen is having a better season than Mahomes. Mm-hmm. I think he's looking better this year than Mahomes. I'm not saying he's better than Mahomes. I'm just saying this year he's looking better, playing better football. I just trust Kansas City's coaching a lot more, not only offensively but defensively. And Arrowhead's a tough place to fucking win. But anyways, playoffs a different breed. Josh Allen has struggled, and Sean McDermott as well has struggled at these stages. So until I see them have a stronger performance this late in a season, Josh Allen's going to pull his dick out and do something with it. Do you know what I mean? He's going to have to do something a little bit better than what he's been doing in the past to get the job done.
Matt, I'm kind of with him. I don't know about you, and no offense to Kay, because I posed the question. I do think James Cook needs to play well. It can't be like, oh, this guy disappeared. But if the Bills are to win this game, I think at the end it's going to be like, well, Josh put on the Superman cape in the fourth quarter, and maybe it's like the last game where he runs a touchdown in from distance. I'm not sure, but I know it ain't going to be as easy as it was in November whenever that game was played, because the emotions are high. This game, I mean, let me just put it this way. Who's got more to lose? Who's got more to gain? Because on the Chiefs side, it's history, potentially, and then on the Bills side, it's so much. It's, obviously the last 5 years, but maybe a first Super Bowl, like a lot at stake.
Opportunity, scarcity, things of that nature. Brian, I want to throw it back. You mentioned the game in November. I have some thoughts about that game. Call me a conspiracy theorist if you will. I don't think Kansas City put their best foot forward in that ballgame. I just don't. If you look back at the offensive play calling, if you look back at the fact that Patrick Mahomes didn't have a single rush in that game, I think what an X factor here that not a lot of people are talking about. I think what we could see on the Kansas City side of the ball offensively is potentially that team that we thought we would see going into this season, right? All these offensive weapons kind of growing, developing, coming to fruition. We've got a Xavier Worthy that's a little bit more developed. We've got DeAndre Hopkins a little bit more acclimated. We've got Kelsey coming out of the garage, as we saw last week, trying to put things all together. And like I said, Patrick Mahomes are scrambling out of the pocket. That's an X factor, right? That's a guy you're going to have spying him to account for, leaving somebody else open down the field, vice versa. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm crazy for that thought, but that's where I'm at with it. And plus, I just thought the play calling was just bland. So I think maybe they're like, hey, we're going to have to see Buffalo down the road here. We want to win this game if we can, but hey, we're not going to put all our cards on the table quite yet.
Matt, Buffalo and their fans at this point need to hear something good, those who might be listening.
Not for me.
Look, I mean, when Kansas City has the ball, this is just me I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible. I do not think, with the injuries they have, Rapp is most likely going to be out. The nickel, Teron Johnson, is banged up. We'll see, probably plays, but at what percent? The corner, Benford, he's in concussion protocol. And this is before, we're talking about a defense that a month ago, we watched them play against the Rams and Lions, and we all said that defense is not good enough to go to a Super Bowl. But how quickly we forget that we were just saying that. So what am I getting to? I don't think their DBs can handle the speed Kansas City's going to throw at them. If they do, if they make that huge shift to play deep and keep Hollywood and Worthy in front, I think you're going to see Kelsey go back to the well. I think you're going to see Hopkins have what he wants. That's before we talk about what Kareem might be able to do or Pacheco when they sprinkle him in. However, where can Buffalo gain an advantage? Obviously, it's at the line. And particularly, these freaking defensive ends with long arms that they have. They got Russo and Epinesa, and Miller still looks pretty good. They get their hands up. They bat balls up. It's happened more than once before where they'll knock one up and intercept it. That shit scares me because the Chiefs have relied on the quick passing game a lot lately. I don't think we can afford to do that in this one. Our protection needs to get the job done and let these receivers have time to run open because there's going to be space. You just got to be able, to block for a little bit. But on the Buffalo side, I'm sure they're going to see it differently. Breezy, what's your key that you're looking at? I know we talked about Cook earlier on that side. What about when the Chiefs and the Bills are on defense?
Well, when the Bills are on defense, Brian, I think it's going to come down to containing Kelsey, because we've seen when Kelsey turns up that the game's pretty much over, right? We saw him do it against the Texans last week, and I think that's what's going to come down to is what do you hold Trav to? Do you double Trav? What do you do, right? But more than anything, aside from the defense, I think Josh simply has a chip on his shoulder, knowing that his MVP is going to get stripped from him, from Lamar. And that's my opinion. Now, you can take it how you want it. But ultimately, I think that's what it's going to come down to is that chip. And I think that 3-0 burden is going to sit on Josh's shoulder. Now, you got to realize, too, Pat's not going to always swing by Buffalo, right? Big Ben got passed over the years, right? Peyton got passed through Tom over the years, vice versa, right? So it's always going to be a mix of bouncing. And we're going to see this with Pat. We're going to see it with Josh. We're going to see it with Burrow. I think it's just going to be a mix of these three guys for the next 10-plus years. But I think this year's a little different. So I'm not going to give my prediction yet, but ultimately I think this is the year, perhaps, Josh gets by.
Little tease. One thing, both these teams, different than years past, the quarterbacks are, and you kind of said it earlier, under 200 passing yards. A little bit more of a elite game manager type of approach. The Chiefs, as a team, hold an NFL record right now, most games without a turnover. They've went 8 straight, which blew my mind. I had no idea that was even going on. But Buffalo's not far behind. Like, Allen's not turning it over either. I think Cook's put it on the ground a time or two, but we know ball security is being coached up this week, as it should be. So that's always a key, and maybe that's the difference. Turnover differential. Let's see. Big key. Both teams have guys coming back from injury. So I would really throw the first matchup out for the most part, just based on the names that are returning. But the one I'm looking at, Matt, is with Watson coming back at the corner position. That is going to enable the Chiefs to put McDuffie, who did not cover Shakir the entire game last time. They had a safety covering him. McDuffie's going to be able to go in there, and I think Shakir's a really good receiver. I don't think he wants that. I don't think that's a matchup that favors him. So then Josh has to look outside, and maybe Amari Cooper makes those plays that he did in November. Or maybe Mac Hollins, who is probably my least favorite player in the league right now. Because I don't know. Guy, he thinks he is an all-pro, and I don't know why. So that, I think, is key. Like that, the way that that's going to shake out now, so much different than November, could also be the difference.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're right. I mean, it's kind of like these guys are kind of coming together, getting fully healthy again at the right time, and that's obviously going to be an X factor. Another point I wanted to make, like you said, Mac Hollins, infuriating. Absolutely. I went on a rant weeks ago about that guy. I don't know why the no shoes thing just doesn't sit well with me. It just rumbles me in my gut, and I don't understand it. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of interesting aspects to this game. I think it's going to come down to a lot of the brain power too, right? It's something we haven't really touched on. We got Reed versus McDermott with Spagnuolo and Joe Brady, and I think it's going to be interesting to see the chess match, right? Kind of what I was alluding to earlier. It's like, were we what we seeing in the November game? Was it decoy? Was it setting up for this one? I don't know. That'll be kind of fascinating to know. And I don't know. I think all that's going to combine for quite the interesting tale for sure.
And maybe Buffalo by now, after losing 3 times in the playoffs, maybe they've learned a thing or two about, okay, we do need to hold some cards in the vest. If they've done that, they've obviously got a much better shot. Going to be a great game. With that being said, Bass Daddy, it's time to make our picks. Who's going to the Super Bowl in your mind to face the Eagles?
coming from a Steelers fan, guys, years ago, you didn't want to see Tom Brady and the Patriots going to the Super Bowl every fucking year.
Hmm.
Didn't want to see the Patriots come into Pittsburgh and beat our ass. Chiefs are that team now. I love them for you guys, but as a Steeler fan, all those years with Brady winning all those rings and Manning only being able to win 2, Roethlisberger only being able to win 2, Rodgers only being able to win 1, Eli Manning having, 1 or 2, however many he's got, I don't know. But I think Josh Allen, I think this is his time. This is his year to get that one. Maybe he gets another one in 2 or 3 years, and that's it. Patrick Mahomes is going to win another 4 or 5. I'm taking the Bills on a score that maybe by 1 or 2 points, winning on a last-second field goal. It's risky picking them because of the coaching. Because, like I said earlier, I trust Andy Reid and Spagnuolo a lot more than I trust McDermott. But it's wishful thinking. I'd like to see the Bills in the Super Bowl instead of the damn Chiefs. Let me say 29-31. I gotta say it. I gotta say
I
it.
respect the honesty. I'm glad. I respect the honesty, Matt. I'm sure you do too, right?
Absolutely. I wanted to see him do it. I was like, is he going to? Is he going to flirt with it? He's like, I picked the Bills last time. I'm not going to do it again this time. No, he's had enough. He's like the rest of the world.
And speaking of the rest
Yeah,
of the
but
world,
Michigan,
so right now, I guess as of earlier today, 70 to 75% of the money is on Buffalo. Interesting thing, the spread has not moved. What does that mean? The books, at least right now, don't feel like they're in a bad spot. It would be the interpretation. We'll see as things get closer. I think this thing moves to a pick by kickoff, Matt.
Wow. That's crazy. I had no idea about that. Fascinating, man. This is just one for the books, right, guys? There's so many different aspects, like we mentioned. Teams getting healthier. I think the mound of bulletin board material as something that's going to be able to elevate Kansas City just a bit, because frankly, what have they got to play for? They said besides history, but now I think they've got something to prove. Week in, week out, all I hear about is how they only win because they cheat and because of the refs. I think this week they changed that. They flipped that on its head. Like, we are going to go above and beyond to do what it takes, to regardless of what happens as far as flags go. That there's no doubt that they were the better team on the field. They got the better coaching. I think they have the better quarterback. I think they have the better team as a whole. And maybe I'm crazy to say that, but I got them winning this game, and I got them not as close as one might think. I got this being 32-23, and I don't even know if it's that close. I'm being honest with you. I think this game's in the back of the Bills' head. They're like, can we do it? Can we get the job done when it really matters? Because think about all the heartbreaking losses that they've had against Kansas City in the postseason. It's one of those things as an athlete, you guys have probably been there. You're like, it starts to get in your psyche a little bit. You're like, when it comes down to the wire, can we do it? Can we make that one extra play that's going to get the job done? And I'll be honest, I don't think so. I'm sorry, America. Chiefs get it done, and you see them in the Super Bowl at least one more time.
Guys, I earlier, maybe a day or two ago, I meet this guy for the first time, just passing, right? I'll hold back his name. But he starts talking to me. This guy just so happens to be, I guess he wouldn't say a friend, but he knows Michael Jordan. He's played golf with him. He's hung out with him socially. And the connection is through his trainer. He's buddies with Michael's trainer and has been for many, many years. And he's just telling me stories. And the first story he tells is about how Michael is this psycho competitor in everything he does, and he went to a Ferrari dealer in this suburb that they lived in the Chicago area, and he tried to talk down the dealer from $250,000 to maybe $200,000, and the dealer's like, Michael, I know you have this money. Why are you doing this? And it's just that competitive nature. And he told a couple other stories. I'll spare the time. But as he's doing this, I realize that he's describing Michael, but he's also describing, in my opinion, Mahomes. And I think even though we didn't get to watch him, Jordan, that is, none of us did, I think we are now in a new sport. Just the mixture of talent and psycho competitor together to where they're doing things that you just haven't really seen. And one of those being potentially 3 titles in a row. The last time a team did it was the Bulls in a major American sport in the late 90s. And I, as a fan, I have no choice. I'm going to predict that that's what we're headed towards. So I think he finds a way. And I've got Chiefs 28, Bills 21, and a nail biter. It's not going to be particularly fun until it's over, hopefully. Then I'll breathe and relieve Farah. So you going to tie us here? You going with Buffalo too? Or is it Chiefs 3-1? We'll see.
Well, and look, you guys all know this. I'm not in the AFC part of the world, right?
Facts.
We've got some Chiefs guys. We've got some Steelers guy. I'm strictly NFC North. So I have no bias whatsoever when it comes to the AFC, right? And I agree. I think we all want to see a three-peat. Deep down, we do. Whether we want to admit it or not, we want to see it happen. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen come Sunday. I think Josh is coming to town with vengeance. And dare I say it's going to be a TLC match. And I think that not only is it going to be a TLC match, but it also could even be a buried alive match. Who knows? We don't know what we're going to get. Barring any weather, it could be buried alive. But look, I understand Pat's 3-0 against Josh, but I do think that comes to an end come Sunday. Not only is that chip of 3-0 on his shoulder, I think that MVP is about to get stripped from him, like I stated earlier, to Lamar as well. So I think he's coming in red hot. I think Josh, what are we going to get from Amari Cooper? I think if his supporting cast just gets the job done, and I know I stated that James Cook is going to be one of the main decision makers, but James is going to have to help put that cape over Josh in order for him to take off as Superman. And I think he's going to get that come Sunday. I'm going with the Buffalo Bills at Arrowhead with a dub facing the Washington Commanders in the Super Bowl. 33-27.
So let's see. Let's do some housekeeping. Bash, you've got Eagles versus Bills. Maybe America's preferred Super Bowl, but I think it really might be K's, which is the Bills and Commanders. It would be, fun from an entertainment value. And then Matt and I, we agree. Nobody had Chiefs Eagles. I'm sure that's because none of us really want it that bad. Because it is maybe the most likely if you just go by the odds. We'll see, guys.
Well, yeah.
Good.
I mean, you also got to look at it this way, right? If you and I are on the Kansas City side of things, we try to not let our bias get in the middle. Let's be real. Who do we want to see in the Super Bowl? Probably the Commanders. I think they have the better quarterback, but I think that's an easier mountain to climb. So that may be somewhat playing in our psyches.
Yeah, could be. We'll see in a matter of hours.